How we doing? It's Mailman Nick. Follow me on Instagram at Nick Venti. If you enjoy this content, please give me a thumbs up. Don't treat me like a 204B over here. And obviously, these are my own thoughts and opinions. I'll not speak on behalf of the Postal Service. So I got a very special guest with me, taking time out of his day to talk to you guys. Mike, it's great to have you on. To start, can you tell people who don't know you your background and your accomplishments, because you're highly respected in my in Illinois in general?
It's good to hear that, brother. So I'm a letter carrier here in Chicago, and I started in 1994 at the Ravenswood station. Worked a lot of years there, steward there, and then I became a full-time officer in Branch 11 in Chicago. And then that was in 2010. And in 2014, I ran to be the national business agent here in Region 3, it just covers the state of Illinois. And I won that election, and I've been reelected twice now, 2018 and 2022, and served the carriers in Illinois. I do go back and carry my route once a year for like a week. I'm at 22nd Street Station here in Chicago, right outside of Chinatown, right west of Chinatown, under the expressway over there. That's Route 16. It's a beast, baby. It's a beast.
I'm sure it is. Those Chicago streets are not easy. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, but and the way the routes work, we have in Chicago, you have in-station bidding, you have citywide bidding. So if you bid citywide like I did, that means that nobody in that particular station wanted that route. So nobody wanted that route, so that's how I got it. But it's fine. I just wanted a flat route, man. I had a route in Cicero before that, and it was so many stairs. I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah, the suburbs got a lot of stairs.
Yeah. I worked in LaGrange for a little bit, too. That was different because we push a cart in Chicago, and in LaGrange is, we call it backpacking, but, you're carrying a satchel, and I had to kind of learn that. I mean, I've done it, obviously, before, but not regularly. And then they actually had a little bit of mounted route. I had a swing in LaGrange, and one of the routes had a little bit of mounted. I never did that before, so that was a new experience. Right. I just try to stay up to date with everything that's going on with the carriers, and of course I love the interaction, in the mornings, and I like being out there. So I take leave, like I say, at least once a year from my duties, which, as your union rep. And I just go carry my route so I can stay up on everything that's going on. But I guess my main claim to fame is grievances. The business agent, we do grievances, we do organizing, we do the training for most of the stewards, we do training for the branch officers. We're the liaison between the national union in DC and the local branch. So we're just there to help out in any way we can. And I think we've been pretty successful in getting everyone engaged and involved, and we just do a lot of different things to educate people and keep them engaged and assisting them in any way we can. Either it's a regular member or a steward or a branch officer or whatever. So we're available, we're accessible, we're here to help you guys. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that you're still in the trenches, so to speak, because you're still make time to carry your route, see what's going on. And, that's what the people want. They want somebody who understands the grind and understands what we go through as carriers, because you've been through basically every step of the way. You've been everything from, a steward to a carrier to now you're on like the high level. So you've been through everything. You understand.
And I think that's the way it should be, man. I don't believe in having a union career or being a union politician. I think that's crap. We're all letter carriers. The union is a grouping of letter carriers, and the people that represent you, should be letter carriers. Just like, you have your union steward, and your union steward carries their route, right? And they're also your union steward. And sometimes we get away from that, and people get into this. I work for the union, and it's like an office job instead of a letter carrier job. And the union work is letter carrier work, in my opinion. So that's the way I try to keep it.
Right. That's awesome. That's the type of people, that's the type of person that we want as representing us. Going into that, what are your thoughts about the contract? That's the biggest, that I get messages every day about the contract. What are your thoughts on it? And if you were president, what would you be trying to negotiate for us?
All right, so that's a big question. So what I think about the contract is it couldn't be any worse. And
Yep.
not to say that there's not anything good about it or any improvements in the contract, but we went through a period, where let's go back to 2020. We're working through the pandemic. We don't miss a single day. And carriers were scared. We kind of forget. And I don't know how long you've been a carrier, Nick.
A little over 4 years.
So you were around back then, right?
I got hired during the pandemic. Yep.
It was scary, like we didn't know like what we were exposing ourselves to. The science and the information wasn't out there. I know I spent a lot of time. We were doing like these YouTube videos to try to get people information. We were going out to all the post offices and just kind of having stand-ups and talking with the carriers. We'd have to go outside to have the stand-up because we couldn't be in a space with people. And it was a scary time, but we were essential workers and we never missed a day. As far as delivery, I mean, individual carrier might have, but the United States Postal Service and the city letter carriers that serve the public and the Postal Service, we were out there every day. And then they had different groups of workers that were deemed essential. Some of them got hazard pay. Some of them got, the post office got some money for themselves, but not for the employees. But the Postal Service, I forget how much they got during that time, but one of those bills was, financially beneficial to them. But anyway, and then, this added element of getting assaulted out there on the street, which wasn't there before. And then, we're working harder than ever. We're being harassed more than ever. The supervisor, they can look and see where you're at every moment. Oh, you're doing here for 3 minutes. And, so the job's gotten harder. We're essential workers. And we're looking at a contract this time that expired May 20th of 2023. And we're like, okay, now's the time, to put us kind of back, to fix. We had kind of fallen off as far as workforce. We were told we were essential, but we were treated and we're being paid like we're expendable. And we're like, okay, we're gonna fix this, right? We're gonna fix this in this contract. And it dragged on and on and on in negotiations, and it's soon, and give me another couple of weeks. And I mean, legitimately, a lot of the people were like, hey, it's obvious that the president is really, he's really going to come up with some good stuff for us.
Historic.
Yeah, he called it historic, and we're like, all right, and then we get it, and there's so many things wrong with this contract, starting with the fact that the non-career workforce, we stated, and you can go back and look at the press release from February 22nd of 2023. That's when we started negotiations. That's when our president and the postmaster general, they go shake hands, and we're going to start these negotiations. And NALC puts out a statement, and our main goal was to eliminate the CCA position because it causes so many staffing issues. I mean, this used to be a desirable job, and as long as it's a non-career, low-paying job, at least at the beginning, it's not going to be a desirable job, and people are not going to apply for the job. There's going to be a high turnover. There's going to be staffing issues. There's going to be mandatory overtime issues. It just, it doesn't fix the problems that we're having. So just the fact that there's still a CCA classification and we made no improvements on it, no reduction in time, no increase in pay. And the CCA pay, it was always been low, but it fell behind in the last contract because the CCA pay in the last contract did not have a cost of living clause. So when inflation goes up, our wages will go up at least somewhat to compensate for the inflation, but the CCA rate of pay did not go up with the rate of inflation because there's no COLA clause for CCAs in the contract. So we get this new contract and you're looking at, you have CCAs, no increase in pay, no reduction in the time you're going to spend as a CCA, no real improvements in the job classification. And then you look at the regular pay scale, and the president is saying, we're going to consolidate the pay scales. And the table 1 pay scale that was in effect prior to January 10th of 2013, that pay scale started off at what would today be, well, if you look at it, it still says $30 an hour starting pay. And the raises are front loaded so that you're almost all the way to the top at the beginning of the pay scale. So within like 5 years of your career, if you started off as a table 1 career letter carrier, within about 5 years, you'd be very close to what the top pay would be. And then there would just be these incremental raises. And then, once you get to 15 years, you get an extra week of annual leave. And, but after 3 years, you're getting 4 weeks of annual leave, and your pay is almost all the way to the top. So the table 1 pay structure is way better than the table 2, which starts off lower, and all the raises are incremental. So it takes you forever to get to a point where you're making a decent middle class wage. And instead of consolidating everyone into table 1 and raising the starting pay, we consolidated everyone into table 2 in this new contract. And the money, which they added $1,000 at the top step. And if you factor in the $1,000 and you factor in the cost of living raises, and you factor in, which by the way, COLAs are about 50%. The cost of living allowance that we get in our contract is about 50% of what the actual rate of inflation is. So if prices go up by $1, we get 50 cents. So it's not like a 1-in-1. So we have cost of living allowances in the previous contract and in this contract, but when inflation is really high, then you're not keeping up. So we've traditionally had similar pay raises, which is a cost of living plus a general wage increase, which under the terms of this contract is 1.3%. And if you add that in, and you add in the $1,000 that we're going to get extra at the top step after 180 days, if we choose to ratify the contract, you add that in, it does not keep up with the rate of inflation if you go back to 2019. So the contract expired in September of 2019, the last one. And in August of 2019 was our last pay raise. So you look at the pay from at that point, August of 2019, you say, we can't do no worse than that, right? Because that was before the pandemic. That was before we're being assaulted out on the street. That was before the supervisor was in our ass every moment of every day. We can't do no worse than our 2019 pay. And then this tentative agreement does worse if you adjust for inflation than our 2019 pay. So like I say, it couldn't be any worse. There's issues that, most of us didn't expect the president to address. He had informed us that this was going to be an economic endeavor, but we have problems in the grievance process. There's problems with certain things like how you become full-time. There's certain technical contractual things that really need to be fixed, so that like you're supposed to have a full-time carrier for every full-time assignment. And in a lot of places we don't have that. So there's a lot of little things contractually. Like I said, the grievance procedure, the delays, the fact that they're not complying with the terms. But we didn't expect a lot of that to be addressed, but we at least thought that the economic stuff would be, you get
better
an agreement from your president and you're like, okay, I'm going to consider this. I'm not going to just throw it away. But when you look through it, you're like, this is like a definite no. This is a definite no. So you asked the second part of your question, like, what would I do different? I think the main thing is when the carriers went out on strike in 1970, they laid it all on the line, right? And prior to that, it was collective begging. We worked for the U.S. government. And just like if you're in the military or whatever, if you want a raise, you got to go to Congress. You got to try to get a raise. They went out on strike and they changed all that. And they rewrote the law, Postal Reorganization Act of 1970. And that law puts us in a really good position, in a position that a lot of unions would be envious of. But it wasn't, nobody gave it to us. We earned that. And what we earned is the right to go to binding arbitration if the Postal Service isn't acting right in contract negotiations, right? So you have this 90-day period of contract negotiations. With this time, it went from February 22nd to May 20th of 2023. After that period was over, we should have immediately went to arbitration to get a contract that we deserve. And when you go to contract, it's collective bargaining, and you go in front of an interest arbitrator. It's a neutral arbitrator. There's one for us, there's one for the Postal Service, and then there's a neutral arbitrator. And you put everything on the table and you say, hey, how are we going to make this job desirable again? How are we going to make this a job where people coming out of the military will actually apply for it like it's supposed to be? They get points, they get a preference, and the preference is useless because they don't want the job. The law is written that it's supposed to be a career job, and it's supposed to be comparable in pay and benefits to those in the private sector. And the most comparable job to us is UPS drivers. UPS drivers almost went on strike last year, and they got a really good contract. Right now, UPS drivers make what we make at the top step after like 15 years, they make that on day one as a UPS driver. That's their pay on day one. And then they go up to $45 an hour, which is way higher than what we make after 4 years, not after 15 or whatever, after 4 years. So if you compare, and their health insurance is free. The company pays 100% of the health. Now, I don't know, maybe their health insurance is not as good as ours. I don't know. I mean, you got to compare it all. But UPS, if you go to their website, they list compensation, average compensation for their delivery drivers as including pay and benefits, $145,000 a year, average. And our pay and benefits are nowhere near that. So I think we had so many good arguments at arbitration. We still do, but the arguments were better in the summer of 2023, no doubt about it. I think the president dropped the ball by not taking us to arbitration immediately when he found out the Postal Service wasn't serious about giving us a decent contract that we deserve. We should have just told them, hey, you know what? We're going to do this the nice way, or we're going to do this the nice way. If we got to go to arbitration, we go to arbitration. That's our right under the law that we earned. And if you don't hold that over their head and enforce that right, then you're not going to get there. So the good thing is, hey, every carrier gets a vote now in this tentative agreement, and we can force this arbitration even now, which, is delayed, and the circumstances are not as good now as they were then. The Postal Service is reporting a lot of losses, which really isn't in the law, and it really, but it has an effect, So we're not in as good of a position, but we're still in a really good position. The fact of the matter is that we are going to end up, if you go in front of a neutral person, somewhere between what the clerks make and what UPS drivers make, right? I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, so it should be in between the clerks and the UPS drivers. Where we're at in this tentative agreement is almost exactly where the clerks are at. So to me, that's the floor, right? Like if we're going to end up in between the clerks and the UPS drivers, if we're sitting where the clerks are at, we can't do no worse. And that's my opinion. We can't do no worse. And we got to fight, because if we accept this lousy contract, what does that say for the future of our craft, for the Postal Service, and just our livelihood, if this is deemed by us to be an acceptable and decent contract? How do we negotiate for a better one? How do we get a better one in the future if we've already set the bar so low for ourselves? So I'm encouraging everyone to vote a big fat no on this thing.
Yeah, we need to step up and, say no now before, we won't have any negotiating power. We accepted this, and, in the future, they're going to be like, oh, you accepted this type of deal in the past, and now it's.
I mean, one of the ironic things, Nick, is that, you had CCA time, right? You started as a CCA?
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years, right? So we got people that had longer time than that as CCA, non-career classification, even going back to the T's and all that. Anyway, we're trying to get a bill passed through Congress that would give our people their be able to buy back your time so that you can get credit for it, right? And of course, we're going to support that going forward. But how do you ask Congress to put this into law at the same time we agreed to that very same non-career provision in the contract when we negotiate with the employer? If it's not a good provision, then we shouldn't agree to it. It doesn't work that way. It really undermines our position when we say we deserve this. Well, apparently we think we don't if we accept a contract that includes CCA. So, the other thing is, man, now's the time. Now is the time where we can really make a statement and improve on our pay and working conditions in a way we haven't done in so many years. So that's my thoughts.
Right, because we see all these other, so we see all these like UPS and all these other unions getting their workers the right amount of money, but then we're over here, we get our 1.3%. You see the memes and stuff. It just feels like a slap in the face. I asked you, like, because I'm going to be step C, and you said that's the new bottom, and I'm going to be making the same amount as, a new career carrier, and I've been here 4 years, and we're kind of getting the small end of the stick in that regard. Yeah,
man, there's a lot of things. Even so, you have the CCA pay, which usually goes for 2 years, but it could be less, and then you get into the career pay scale. Why not at the very least say, okay, we're going to give everyone credit for their CCA time in the pay scale? Now, you wouldn't be able to get credit towards retirement because that's in the law. The non-career time does not count toward retirement. But what about in the pay scale? That's something we could negotiate for. You know, look out for our people. Like you said, you got 4 years in, you shouldn't be at the bottom step. You should have some type of credit for the time. You know, how about your time as a letter carrier is your time as a letter carrier? And as soon as you get on the career pay scale, just add up my time. I don't care where I was at, because the other thing we have is CCAs that, you know, they took a job and then they had to travel like an hour to work. So they're like, no, I'm gonna keep applying for jobs and I'm gonna get one closer. Well, they spend a year and a half as a CCA, then they go into a new office, and then they spend 2 years there. So now they got 3.5 years as a CCA, and then when they get on the career pay scale, they start right at the bottom. Why not just say, okay, once you get on the career pay scale, all of your time as a letter carrier is going to count toward the pay scale. Divide that time by 46 weeks and put me at that step. That's not unreasonable. That's just basic fairness and something that we should be able to get. And there's a lot of things like that in this contract. Some of the legal language and some of the economic language that it just doesn't make any sense, and it's not fair. And I think that if we have to put our case in front of an arbitrator, I think the arbitrator would come back and be reasonable. Whereas our employer, management, the Postal Service, they're not reasonable, you know?
Right. Definitely not. Definitely not.
And then, you know, and I keep saying is if they want to go to the arbitrator and cry broke, then we're going to tell them how they can not be broke. But there's a lot of ways you can not be broke. You can get rid of all these supervisors that serve no purpose but to harass us. You can stop violating the terms of the contract and save yourself all that grievance money. You can set up a real hiring process if we got to do it for you, I guess, because, you know, you have so much turnover and things like that cost you money. Your staffing issues are costing you so much money in overtime, penalty overtime. Now we're going to have double time and a half. You know, that's how bad the staffing situation is in a lot of offices. And so we can help you with your finances, or you can take the damn finances, your finances off the table, because the law doesn't talk about that. And let's just talk about what is pay that would be a career job and what would be a desirable job and what would be comparable to the pay in the private sector, and what would make it so it's a job that's desirable where people will stick with it. And like I say, it'll be a career like it should be.
Exactly.
I think we got a strong case at arbitration, a very strong case.
Yeah, I hope so.
That told us we had a strong case. He kept telling us for over a year that we had a strong case, and the Postal Service doesn't want to go to arbitration because they know we have a strong case. And it's like, all right, man, let's do it.
Kept stringing us along.
Yeah.
But I got one more thing, and I'll let you go. I know you're a busy guy. What happened? Did your mic get cut off in that rap session?
Yeah, so we had 4 rap sessions theoretically part of the rap session is 100% to go over some of the new terms that have been negotiated in the contract. And the reason I say 100% is because even if we vote it down and we go to arbitration, there's going to be a lot of those terms that have already been agreed to by the parties. So if you have a tri-party arbitration panel and you got an NALC person and you got a USPS person, and they agreed, like, for example, some of the changes in Article 8, where you're going to have 2 overtime desire lists. You're going to be able to say, do I want to work my NS day, or do I want to work overtime on a regularly scheduled day? I can get on both, or I can get on either one of them, or I can get on none of them. That change, and it's going to be in the new contract one way or another. We go to arbitration, the parties already agreed to that. You know, that's not something that they're going to refight over or whatever. So there was a lot of things that were discussed that were went over with the people in attendance that were kind of, okay, I need to understand this as well as I can, because I need to be able to implement this change in the contract. Now, there's another aspect to the rap sessions, which is, do we want to vote yes or no? And that's basically going to be about the economic stuff. So I felt that there was a lot of presentation coming from the podium, because obviously the president, and maybe your viewers don't know this, but the president pretty much does contract negotiations on his own. The way the Constitution is written, the president is in charge of collective bargaining. The president can choose to bring in whoever they want as part of that collective bargaining process, or they can just, you know, he utilizes the people that he wants, not necessarily your other elected representatives like me, the business agent, or other people on the executive council. So, and that's fine. That's per the Constitution. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to have a presentation about the contract, it's kind of like he's patting himself on the back, like, let me show you guys why I got you a good deal, instead of saying, let's have an open discussion about the pros and the cons. Is this a good deal or not? Like, for example, there was no slide that compared our salary to that of UPS drivers. And what he said from the podium was, hey, we're at the end of this contract, we're going to be at 87% of what UPS drivers make at the top. So you're taking some information and you're providing it, and then you tell us that it's always been that way throughout history. But there was no actual slide on any of that, and there's no slide showing the comparison. If you started as a UPS driver tomorrow and you worked a 30-year career as a UPS driver, you would make tons of money more than if you started as a career letter carrier tomorrow, and that kind of thing. So there was a lot of information from the podium that was one-sided or incomplete, or just not all the information that you needed. There's a memorandum that we have, for example. And so what happened in Houston, we had a meeting prior to any of these rap sessions where we were able to raise any questions that we had about any of the contractual language. We didn't have a meeting as an executive council to say if we were going to vote yes or no, or if we recommended to the membership yes or no. We didn't do all that, and it didn't matter because every active carrier gets a vote, yes or no. Me being on the executive council doesn't get me 2 votes. It just, I still get 1 vote, just like you get 1 vote, and President Renfroe gets 1 vote, right? So we didn't have any discussion in the executive council about whether we thought it was a good contract. Nobody said this is a good contract. Nobody said this is a bad contract. We just wanted to understand the terms so we can explain those to our members in our areas. And we did that. And one thing I didn't realize until we got to Houston. So the first time I got to the microphone in Houston, I asked President Renfroe, I said, why is the all-career model memorandum not listed in the contract? So if you go into the tentative agreement, there's a bunch of memorandums listed that are carried over from the previous contract. And I just assumed that the all-career memorandum, and so the all-career memorandum, for those of you not aware, there's certain installations around the country, like here in Illinois, almost everything in the northern suburbs, a lot of the western suburbs, Bloomington, a couple of the cities in the Quad Cities, the stuff near St. Louis and the Metro East St. Louis area, they're in the all-career model, meaning that from day one, the carriers in those installations are not hired as CCAs, they're hired as career carriers. And in the new contract, it's going to be like a $6 an hour bump. You get better health insurance, you get life insurance, you get credit for your time toward retirement. I mean, it's a huge deal, right? Yeah. And I'm looking through the list of the memorandums to see that it's going to be in the new contract, and it's not. And I'm like, what? So I get to the microphone. This is like me thinking in real time, And I'm like, President Renfroe, can you give us some idea of why this is not in the contract? And he's like, well, I didn't want it to be. And I'm like, huh? Why would you not want it to be? You don't want us to get the extra $6 an hour to start it? Like, why would you not want it to be? And he's like, well, we might want to redo some of that language. And I'm like, that's fine. Go ahead and redo some of the language. But in the meantime, you have a starting point, right? And he's like, well, the Postal Service they don't want to withdraw from the memorandum. I'm like, great. Why don't we put that in writing, make them sign their name to say that they're not going to withdraw from the memorandum, or at the very least, that the offices that are already included in the all-career model will continue in the all-career model throughout the length of the contract. It's a contract. So until they sign that, we don't have that. And what's written in the memorandum now, the memorandum is in effect, but it's not in the contract. And what the memorandum says is that either party can opt out, completely opt out with 30 days notice. So you could have a change in the post office, a new postmaster general, or they could just say, you know what? We don't want to pay all this extra money. And they could opt out of that thing. And in 30 days, all those people in all of those installations around the country would have to go back to hiring CCAs and losing that $6 an hour that we would get in the tentative agreement. So I just didn't understand that. I'm like, how would, and then the other thing I wanted to bring up to President Renfroe was I read back to him his words, like I said, from February 22nd, 2023, about how important it was for us to get rid of the CCA classification, how it was going to solve a lot of our problems in the hiring and the staffing and the the non-career workforce just doesn't work. That's what we told the post office. At the beginning of negotiations, we said non-career workforce just doesn't work. And then a year and a half later, that's exactly what we agreed to. And so my question to President Renfroe was like, how did that happen? Like what, how does that explain that to us? Make that make sense, make it make sense, right? So he considered that to be confrontational. He's like, we're just here to understand the terms of the TA. We're not here to debate. We're not here, blah, blah, blah. And so I think I kept at it. I don't know. There's audio. You can listen to the audio, but I don't remember because in real time, you don't remember exactly what's going on. But, I'm kind of like going back and forth with him. And then at one point, he tells the person controlling the sound at that hotel in Houston, turn off the mic. And so he turned off the mic. And then I think I got him to turn it back on in Houston. So that was Houston, and went to San Francisco. In San Francisco, I went to the mic right away. So they got this 3-hour presentation. Then they go to questions. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to wait to the end. I'm just going to go and say what I got to say right away. So I went to the mic. He tried to cut me off. One of the people that was there, president of San Diego Branch 70, Ricardo Guzman, lit him up. He lit him up. He said, Mr. President, you're not the king. You don't run this thing. You work for us, not the other way around. This brother wants to talk. He's going to talk. And the president backed down. So, I was able to bring forth the stuff I wanted to bring forth. And then in Minneapolis, it got a little weird. There's audio on that too. He ended up shutting off the mic in Minneapolis. He's like, we went over this already. And I'm like, we went over this in Houston, but we didn't go over this in Minneapolis. It's a new group of people, they might want to hear the different points as well. He's like, no, we're going to turn off your mic. And then I was like, I'm going to go to another mic, but then I didn't because it was getting late and a lot of people were leaving. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, people are going to make up their own mind anyway. I'm not trying to, fight with him at every moment of every day. So then the fourth rap session in DC, I decided instead of having that back and forth with him, I just wrote down and I posted up on my website. You could go to the carefforprez.org website, Caref with a 4, Caref 4, CAREF 4. Prez, PREZ.org, and you can look at. I just wrote a letter. This is the letter, and it was like, hey, people here at the rap session. Here's what's been going on with these microphones. Instead of me fighting with the president, let me just give you some points to think about, some counterpoints. You're gonna hear the shit from the podium. Let me give you some counterpoints that you can think about. Raises don't keep up with inflation. The Postal Reorganization Act only says that. Our pay needs to be comparable to the compensation paid in the private sector. This tentative agreement is not comparable to UPS drivers' pay. UPS drivers is a lot more. We didn't accomplish our goal of eliminating the CCA classification. The CCA classification didn't even improve in this TA. The all career memorandum that I referenced is not in the TA. And this contract is almost identical to what the clerks got in their last round of contract negotiations. And the clerk contract has always been the 4 for us, right? Like, if the post office can afford to pay the clerks whatever, they can afford to pay us the same thing plus something.
Exactly.
Whether it's plus 1% or plus 10% or plus 20%, it's got to be more than that. So anyway, and then the last point I made is the uniforms. Dude, so we have a memorandum in the contract now. So the contract is a 2019 to 2023 contract, September 2019 to May of 2023 contract, which because we don't have a new one yet, the terms roll over, right? So under that contract, the uniform allowance is $499. And that's what we've been getting, $499. Well, since we negotiated that contract, the cost of uniforms has probably doubled. And in that contract, we had a memorandum that said, we're going to study a better way to do the uniforms. So you don't have to do an allowance where you have authorized vendors that are able to gouge and increase the prices whenever they want to. You could have a system where the post office just provides us the uniforms, like when you're in the military, like I think UPS drivers have a system like that. They call it the quartermaster system. It just provides you the uniforms. They can do that. They could own a apparel company, right? They could partner with a Nike or whatever to make uniforms, and then they would say, okay, we're going to give you this amount of money to go to our Nike postal store and buy uniforms, but they would be able to control costs that way because they would own the means of production. That's one. There's a different varieties of ways you could do it, right? So under the terms of the old contract, they were going to study better ways of doing it. Well, we get into this new tentative agreement, and there's no new way of doing the uniforms. And the same memorandum that was in the last contract is proposed to be in this contract, which is we're going to keep studying the thing. And my thing is, you can study this thing till the cows come home, but you need to give us an allowance that is comparable to what we need to buy our uniforms. So if prices have doubled, go ahead and double the allowance and then keep working on it, finding a new system. And guess what? You might actually have an incentive to come up with a better uniform system, because now you're going to be paying out $1,000 per year instead of $500 per year. And maybe that'll incentivize you to come up with something that's more cost effective. We have to bear the cost of the increase in the price of uniforms. What the hell is that, man? So to me, that's just such a, on top of everything else, that's a big slap in the face. That really pissed me off. And the fact that he doesn't really go over that in detail. There's no slide at these rap sessions that say, here's how much uniform costs have gone up. I'd like to know. Is it 100% increase? Is it 200% increase? Is it only 10% increase? Maybe my math is wrong, whatever. But whatever that is, we should know what that is, because that's what the increase in uniform allowances should be. The clerks got a 2.5% increase in their uniforms, and that's exactly what we got. And that's what we traditionally get is 2.5%. But if the costs are going to go up 100%, don't give us no damn 2.5%. So anyway, I passed that out in DC, and I said, look, you guys, I'm giving you the information in your hand. You got to read. I know how letter carriers are with reading. Nobody wants to do it. I'm at least putting it in your hand. If you want this information, you can. So, hey, I want to tell you that there's going to be, especially for your listeners that are in Illinois, but I think it's going to be open to anyone. So the Illinois State Association of Letter Carriers is going to sponsor 3 rap sessions to talk about the contract, to talk about whether we want to ratify it, yes or no, all the pros and the cons. And the first one is going to be this Wednesday, November the 6th at the Branch 11 Hall in Chicago. I think it's like 6 p.m. or in the evening in Chicago. The second one is going to be at the regional office, which is in Lisle, Illinois. That'll be on November the 10th, 2 o'clock to 6 p.m. The advantage of that is that if you're coming from out of town or whatever, we're off the next day, Veterans Day. Well, most of us are off on Veterans Day. And then the third one, there's going to be one in Bloomington, Illinois on Veterans Day, November 11th. So that's an opportunity if you want to come out and hear, a more, I would say, better discussion,
better discussion.
Information up that's, like I say, pros and cons, and give you an idea of where we're at. Anyway, so at least people in Illinois, or if they want to travel, they can, but that will be available to them starting this Wednesday and this Sunday and this next Monday. So.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you want to plug? Any socials where people could find you?
Yeah, like I said, I put out the website. Caref for Prez is that's everything. Like if you go on YouTube, it's Caref for Prez, CAREF 4, and then PREZ. Same on Facebook, same on TikTok, whatever. Everyone knows how to find me, man. It's never been a problem.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, I appreciate you coming on. Have a good day, all right?
You too, my brother. Thanks. Actually, I don't know if you're aware, your branch has a little event for the retirees today starting at noon.
I'll do that.
Yeah, I'm going over to that. You gotta dress up a little bit. So I'll put on my finest suit and I'll head over there to hang out with the good brothers and sisters in branch 4016. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. Yeah, looking crisp, ready to go.
That's right, baby.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Mike.
I appreciate you, Nick. Don't work too hard, man.
Yep, I'll try not to. Take it easy.
All right, bye-bye.